Emmerdale for Tuesday, the 29th of July teases that Moira Dingle is being pushed to the brink of collapse as betrayals, bankruptcies, and sinister manipulations converge on her beloved family farm. In the soft pre-dawn light, the rolling fields that have fed the Dingle family for generations seem to taunt at every blade of grass, whispering a reminder of how quickly everything she holds dear can be taken away. Her turmoil begins with a gut-wrenching betrayal. Sam and Lydia, once steadfast members of the Dingle clan, have inexplicably aligned themselves with the Tate family. Moira first senses their defection during a tense early morning meeting in the kitchen of Home Farm Cottage. The ritual clatter of mugs and cutlery falls silent as Sam, brow furrowed, delivers the crushing news. Lydia, always fiercely loyal to her mother's side, offers nothing but a curt nod. In that moment, Moira feels the floor shift beneath her feet. The very people she trusted above all have abandoned her to face an encroaching storm alone. Kane's anguish mirrors hers. He retreats to the yard, hands clenched at his sides, staring at the rows of cattle, as if they might somehow reassure him. But he finds no comfort there. The farm, which was meant to be their sanctuary, has become a battleground. Sam's smooth explanations about better opportunities and Lydia's vague apologies do nothing to dull the sting of their treachery. They depart in the family Land Rover, their backs turned to the place they once called home, leaving Moira and Kane to grapple with the seismic shift in loyalties. Almost as if timed to perfection, the next blow lands in the form of a summons from the Environment Agency. A massive slip of mud and slurry has leaked from the Dingle land into the stream that borders Home Farm, triggering an ecological alert. The resulting fine is astronomical. A figure that eclipses the farm's annual profits and threatens its very existence. Moira's heart sinks as she reads the official notice: remediation costs, restoration fees, punitive charges for environmental damage. The paper trembles in her hands, a cruel parody of the steady ledger pages she's so often balanced. She recalls the events that led to the leak. Mackenzie, the farmhand she thought she could trust, had overseen the slurry pit this spring. He assured her the new liner was secure. But in truth, it was John, long estranged and nursing old resentments, who sabotaged the pit's integrity. John's motives remain murky. Was it simmering jealousy, or a darker desire to undermine Moira's authority? She cannot say. All she knows is that the mud poured unchecked into the waterways, staining the Dingle name in the eyes of regulators and neighbors alike. Unable to absorb the full brunt of the penalty immediately, Moira files an appeal. She stays up late into the night drafting her case, digging through environmental reports, gathering testimony from agronomists. She convinces herself that logic and evidence will prevail, that the council will recognize the sabotage and rescind the fine. Yet even as she labors over her submission, a nagging doubt worms its way into her mind. Who would gain if her appeal failed? Who stood ready to watch the Dingles fall? The answer comes sooner than she expects. A cryptic call from an anonymous informant hints that Joe Tate has been bribing the water board to sink her appeal. The realization strikes like a thunderbolt. Joe, her erstwhile rival turned shadowy puppet master, has been orchestrating her downfall from behind the scenes. His motives are twofold. First, to force a sale of Kim Tate's neighboring farm at an advantageous price, and second, to sever the Dingle stronghold on the valley's prime land. Moira confronts the council in person. She stands in the austere conference room, bright fluorescence shining down on her as she lays out her case with unerring precision. She produces soil analyses, engineering assessments, even geophysical surveys demonstrating that the liner failure was deliberate. The council members exchange glances. For a moment, it looks as though she might win. Then one official, face stone-cold, informs her curtly that her appeal has been rejected due to procedural irregularities. No explanation, no chance to rebut. Her documents are returned in a manila envelope, the evidence effectively nullified. Walking away, Moira tastes bile in her mouth. The encounter confirms her fears. Joe Tate is everywhere. His influence seeps into every corner of local governance, from the water board to the planning committee. Even the otherwise impartial members of the environmental agency seem to nod knowingly at each other when her name is mentioned. As Moira reels from this betrayal, Joe strikes again. This time, with a tantalizing proposal regarding Kim Tate's adjacent estate. A formal offer arrives in the post, an attractive purchase price for the land, coupled with a clause allowing Moira to remain as farm manager, now effectively a tenant rather than an owner. The terms seem generous, almost too generous. She imagines the relief of handing over the crippling debt, while staying on the land she loves. Yet each ink-stained word of the contract reminds her that she would be surrendering her birthright, the family legacy built over generations. That evening, she confides in Kane in the dim warmth of the farmhouse kitchen. Panicky thoughts swirl between them like dust motes in the sinking sun. Kane, still bruised from Sam and Lydia's betrayal, swings between anger at Joe and a sense of resignation about their dwindling options. They sit side by side on the worn leather sofa, the contract laid out before them, and Kane places his hand over hers. "Whatever you decide," he murmurs, "I'm with you." His loyalty is a balm, yet even his steadfast support cannot fully chase away her dread. There is no simple path forward. If she refuses Joe's offer, the fine will hang over the farm like a specter, creditors circling hungrily. If she accepts, the Dingle name will be erased from Decide Fields, replaced by the pristine banner of Tate ownership. Moira fights to steady her breathing, to silence the cacophony of worst-case scenarios clamoring for her attention. As the wind whistles through the gaps in the old sash windows, Moira's thoughts drift to Kyle, their teenage son. He's no stranger to turmoil. He's hidden a broken heart before, borne the weight of his family's secrets, even taken drastic measures to protect those he loves. But this time, the stakes feel higher. He needs stability, a sense of home. She pictures his wide eyes when she tells him what might happen. That their world could change irrevocably, that the farm itself might slip through her fingers. Sleep eludes her. Night after night, she lies awake on the pale linen sheets, replaying every encounter from that week. Sam's cool betrayal, the callous council decision, the cunning offer from Joe, Kane's torn expression. Each memory dovetails into another, forming a mosaic of crisis that seems impossible to escape. By dawn on the third day, Moira knows she cannot remain paralyzed. She resolves to dig deeper into Joe's machinations. He has played his cards too overtly, and there must be a way to unmask his schemes. She enlists Marlon and Paddy, trusted confidants from the village, to help her trace financial transactions and interview contacts within the water board. Though wary at first, afraid of Joe's reach, they agree, stirred by loyalty and righteous indignation. Their investigation yields small triumphs. A trace of an unaccounted payment, a ledger entry in a back room at home farm showing funds moved through an offshore account. But these breadcrumbs are not enough to halt the council's machinery, or to dissuade Joe from pressing his advantage. Each breakthrough feels Pyrrhic, a fleeting victory on an uneven playing field. Meanwhile, the farm's mood darkens. The cattle sense the tension. The crops wilt slightly under Moira's distracted care. Even faithful the border collie seems to steal glances at her, as if sensing her turmoil. Moira pushes through the daily chores with mechanical precision, but inside she is fraying. Every hoof she trims, every bale she stacks, every fence she mends reminds her of how fragile their existence has become. Word of the farm's plight spreads through the village. Some neighbors rally to Moira's side, offering help or moral support. Others, fearing Joe's wrath or swayed by his promises, keep their distance. At the woolpack, whispers swirl. A chance to invest, to buy at rock-bottom prices. Moira hears her own name spoken with pity or opportunism. She steels herself against these voices, but cannot quell the ache of isolation. Just as her resolve begins to falter, another blow arrives. Kyle's distress call in the dead of night. His panic-stricken, after encountering two masked intruders in the cattle yard. The memory of that night is seared into Moira's mind. Kyle, wide-eyed and shaking, had told her how the strangers, part of Robert's drug-running network, had threatened him, forcing him to defend himself with the pitchfork. One intruder fled wounded, the other escaped into the darkness. Kyle's face went ghostly as he recounted how the second figure had muttered Joe Tate's name as they threatened him. Moira's blood runs cold. The farm has become a theater of terror, and Joe's fingerprints are all over it. She steels herself, and, in a burst of desperate courage, storms into the local police station at first light. There, she levels her accusation. Joe Tate orchestrated the attack to intimidate her, to force her hand in the sale. The officer behind the desk, sympathetic but surprised, jots down her statement and promises to assign an investigator. Yet Moira knows the odds are against her. Joe's influence over local law enforcement is as potent as his sway over council members. She suspects her plea will be filed away, buried under paperwork, or quietly dismissed. Still, she cannot remain silent. To do so would be to admit defeat. Returning home, Moira finds Kane waiting in the yard, face drawn and weary. She recounts the exchange, her voice tight. He wraps his arms around her, firm and unyielding. "We do this together," he murmurs. "They'll have to reckon with the Dingles." For the first time in days, Moira feels a flicker of hope, Kane's unwavering loyalty a beacon in the encroaching gloom. But the respite is brief. News comes that trade in Home Farm's boardroom has concluded. Kim Tate's estate will indeed change hands at Joe's prompting. The contract is signed, the ink drying even as Moira reads the formal notice. Her heart constricts. She has one last choice. Sign the surrender, securing her family's immediate safety at the cost of their heritage, or refuse, risking everything to fight on. Trembling, she sets her jaw and picks up the pen. Yet as she hovers above the signature line, her resolve wavers. The farm looms before her through the sunlit window, a place of childhood memories, of laughter and tears, of life's most fundamental joys. How can she forfeit that? At that moment, Celia, an assertive neighbor who rents nearby land, arrives with an offer of her own. She speaks brusquely at first, offering to lease the Dingle farm at a token rate, then softens, weaving tales of solidarity and friendship. Moira senses Celia's motives are mixed, genuine concern entwined with a desire to profit or curry favor. Nevertheless, Celia's presence reminds Moira that not all alliances have soured, that one might still find allies even in unexpected places. As the afternoon shadows lengthen, Moira stands in the farmhouse doorway, contract in hand, torn between signing and tearing it in two. The air feels charged, as though the land itself holds its breath. Behind her, Kane's shadow falls across the floorboards, a silent testament to his pledge to stand by her side. The moment of decision arrives, and with it, the knowledge that whatever she chooses will reshape the future of the Dingle family forever. Moira stood at the edge of the yard as dusk settled, the sky a bruised lavender above the rolling fields that once felt like sanctuary. The contract still lay on the kitchen table, unsigned, its promise of relief tangled with the bitter knowledge that signing would sever her family's legacy from the land they'd nurtured for generations. Behind her, the farmhouse glowed with lamplight. An island of warmth, even as the world around it seemed to conspire against her. Kane rounded the corner, his boots crunching in the gravel. His face was set, jaw clenched, but his eyes held the steady conviction she'd come to rely on. He'd fought beside her through betrayals and fines, even when hope seemed impossible. "Have you decided?" he asked quietly. Moira inhaled deeply, resting her hand on the rough wood of the fence. "Not yet," she said. I need more time. She met his gaze. We can't give up now. Kane nodded, relief flickering across his features. Whatever you choose, I'm with you, he vowed. She allowed herself a small, grateful smile. But as they stood together, the distant baying of dogs and the rumble of an approaching vehicle shattered the fragile peace. Moira's heart thudded. Visitors at this hour rarely brought good news. Moments later, the headlights of a Land Rover swept across the yard, and Celia hopped out, her wide-brimmed hat tilted jauntily despite the gloom. Moira's relief at seeing a friendly face warred with a flicker of suspicion. Celia had offered to rent part of the land at an almost token rate, generous, perhaps too generous, and Moira suspected ulterior motives. Still, she'd welcomed the company. Celia swept past them into the farmhouse, without waiting for an invitation. "Darling Moira," she exclaimed, her voice bright as a lark's song. "I've brought dinner. And news." She gestured for them to follow her inside. Kane exchanged a wary glance with Moira as they trailed her into the kitchen. The table was set with mismatched plates, and a hearty stew steaming in a pewter tureen. Moira paused at the contract still lying in the middle of the table. Celia's eyes flicked to it, then back to Moira with an encouraging smile. "Thought you might need a bit of comfort," Celia said, ladling the stew. "And I've been talking to some people in the village. There's support for you, real support. Not like others." Moira studied her over a spoonful of stew. "Thank you," she said cautiously. "I appreciate it." Celia perched on a stool, folding her long skirt under her. "Look, about that offer, if you decide to sign with Joe, I want you to know I'm still here. If you change your mind, we could negotiate a proper lease. I'd pay market rate, the real market rate. I think the farm deserves to stay in the family, you know. Even if ownership changes on paper." The sincerity in Celia's tone tugged at Moira's heart. Could this strong-minded woman truly be an ally? Or was she laying the groundwork for another backdoor takeover? Moira's head ached with the question. Before she could answer, Kane cleared his throat. "Why would you help us?" he asked, voice low but firm. "What do you get out of it?" Celia's gaze held his. "Because, Kane, because in the end, this valley needs its farmers. Not faceless corporations. And you Dingles, you've held it together when others would have fled. I believe in that." Moira felt a flicker of warmth toward Celia. Perhaps she wasn't all predator, after all. But the weight of their predicament pressed upon her. She needed more than good intentions. She needed concrete proof that Joe's machinations could be undone. "I'll think on it," Moira said, finishing her stew. "Thank you for everything." Celia rose, brushing crumbs from her skirt. "Any time," she said, offering a hand to Kane and Moira before slipping back into the night as quietly as she'd come. Later that night, Moira lay awake in her darkened bedroom, the farm's troubles swirling through her mind like a gathering storm. She pictured the documents she'd collected, ledgers pointing to offshore accounts, council minutes hinting at impropriety, the faint signature of a waterboard official. None of it was enough to topple Joe Tate alone. She needed proof that would stand up in court, or at least publicly shame him enough to force him back. Kane sat on the edge of the bed, his silhouette a dark sentinel. "We'll find a way," he whispered. "I will not let him win." She reached for his hand, squeezing it. "I know," she said. "But I'm tired. My heart is so heavy." Kane pressed his forehead to hers. "Rest now," he murmured. "Tomorrow we plan." The next morning dawned grey and sullen, the fields still slick from overnight rain. Kyle emerged from the farmhouse, his jacket soaked at the hem, but his face clearer than it had been for weeks. The terror of the masked intruders still haunted him, but his mother's steadfast love and his father's unwavering support had begun to restore his confidence. Moira greeted him with a gentle hug. "How are you feeling?" she asked. He glanced up at her, eyes earnest. "Better," he said. I know those men meant to hurt me. But I'm not scared anymore. Not if I'm with you." Her chest tightened. "You're brave, Kyle. Braver than most adults I know." He blushed. "I did what I had to." Moira ruffled his hair. "That's my boy." As Kyle headed off to help a neighbor repair a fence, Moira felt a surge of protective pride and a renewed sense of purpose. She would not let Joe Tate wreck their lives. Not ever again. That afternoon, Kane and Moira summoned Marlon and Paddy to the kitchen table. Spread out before them were photocopies of bank statements and emails, snippets of conversations hinting at payoffs and clandestine meetings. Marlon, ever the voice of reason, leaned forward. "This is something," he said. "But we'll need direct testimony, someone who witnessed the deals." Paddy nodded, tapping a pen against his notebook. "And dates. We need dates, locations. Are there phone records? Anything to place Joe in the vicinity when those payments were arranged." Kane drummed his fingers. "I'll see what I can dig out of Home Farm's logs. The company phones are monitored, maybe they forgot to scrub something." Marlon tapped his chin. "I can talk to some folks on the water board, off the record, of course. Pressure's on them, too. They hate when their name gets dragged through the mud." Moira exhaled, feeling the first flicker of hope in days. "Thank you," she said. "We'll get there." Meanwhile, Lydia found herself at a crossroads. After her shock betrayal, her relationship with Kane and Moira had soured beyond repair. She'd moved into her own cottage on the edge of the village, striking out on her own. But as she walked through the rose-lined path to Paddy's shop, she couldn't ignore the guilt gnawing at her conscience. Inside, she found Paddy stacking shelves. His calm greeting stilled her nerves. "Lydia," he said gently. "Can we talk?" She nodded, leaning against the counter. I'm sorry," she began. I thought I was doing the right thing, siding with Sam and Joe Tate. But now I see how wrong I was." Paddy's expression softened. "It takes courage to admit that. What matters now is what you do next." Her eyes glistened. "I want to make amends. I know I can't take back my decision, but I need to help Moira and Kane fight Joe. They're the ones who need me now." Paddy placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'll let them know you want to help. They'll appreciate it." Lydia smiled through tears. "Thank you." Back at the farmhouse, Moira was examining a faded map of the valley when Lydia knocked and entered. The silence between them crackled with tension until Lydia ventured forward, her voice small. "I'm here to help." Moira's eyes filled with guarded hope. "I'm glad." Lydia laid out a plan. Using her contacts from Home Farm's office, she could access phone logs and meeting schedules to cross-reference discrepancies. She'd also reach out to Sam, hoping to remind him of his loyalties. Moira felt a thrill. Finally, more allies joined their cause. Kane returned from the fields, mud on his boots, and surveyed the growing group around the table. "We're building firepower," he said with a rare grin. "Joe won't know what hit him." For the first time in weeks, Moira allowed herself to believe they could win. Night fell again as Moira locked the front door and stepped onto the porch. The valley was silent except for the occasional hoot of an owl. In the distance, the lights of Home Farm shone like beacons of the enemy's stronghold. She wrapped her shawl tighter, drawing breath against the chill. Suddenly, headlights skimmed across the field. A car pulled up, and Sam stepped out, his hands raised in a gesture of truce. Moira's heart lurched. She and Kane had barely spoken to him since his departure. Moira, Sam began, voice tentative. Kane. I want to talk. Kane crossed his arms, wary. Speak. Sam swallowed. I found something, emails, just scraps, but they show Joe meeting with waterboard officials. Dates match when you filed your appeal. He's been paying them off. Moira stepped forward, hope and anger warring in her chest. Show me. Sam pulled a USB drive from his pocket. This is everything I could grab. I know I was wrong to leave, but I couldn't stand by. I'm sorry. Lydia came out onto the porch, her eyes bright with triumph. This is the proof we need. Moira's hands trembled as she accepted the drive. You did good, Sam. Kane clapped Sam on the shoulder. Welcome back. At that moment, Moira felt something shift. A quiet but resolute determination settle over her. They had the evidence, the allies, the will to fight. The next step would be to bring it into the light. Inside, as they crowded around the laptop, Moira inserted the USB. Emails and meeting logs scrolled across the screen, each message a nail in Joe Tate's coffin. Marlon and Paddy watched in awe. Moira's chest swelled with vindication and trepidation. Exposing Joe would be dangerous, he would retaliate fiercely, but she knew it was their only path to salvation. Kane reached for her hand. Let's do this. Moira nodded, voice steady. First thing in the morning, we go to the press. We give everything to the local newspaper, hard copies, screenshots, the whole lot. If Joe has influence over the council, he can't control the headlines. Lydia pursed her lips. And we file a formal complaint with the ombudsman. Once it's public, he can't bury it. Marlon added, we should also alert the local MP. The more authorities we involve, the harder it is for Joe to intimidate them all. Paddy tapped the table. Tonight, let's prepare press packs. We need statements from Kyle, about the attack. And from Moira, about the fines. We'll show the pattern. Moira closed her eyes, steeling herself. We'll need to be ready for backlash. Joe won't go quietly. Kane's grip tightened around her hand. Whatever he throws at us, we stand together. And so, in the small hours, they worked by lamplight, assembling documents, drafting letters, printing photos of mud-stained streams and bruised cattle limping toward contaminated pastures. Kyle's testimony was heartfelt. A letter describing the terror of masked men threatening his life, and how he'd had to defend himself with a pitchfork. It spoke to the lengths to which Joe would go to bend the Dingles to his will. Moira paused over Kyle's letter, tears pricking her eyes. She thought of her son, brave beyond his years, and of Kane, standing unwavering at her side. She thought of Lydia, Sam, Marlon, Paddy, and even Celia, whose loyalty had blossomed in Moira's hour of need. And she felt a fierce surge of love for the valley itself, the patchwork of fields and hedgerows that had shaped her life. As the first pale fingers of dawn crept through the window, Moira printed the final page. A cover letter addressed to the Emmerdale Gazette, County MP, and the Oversight Commission. She embossed her signature at the bottom, a solemn vow etched in ink. This is it, she whispered. Kane slipped an arm around her shoulders. It's just the beginning. Moira nodded, feeling the weight of what lay ahead, and the exhilarating promise of reclaiming their farm and their dignity. The papers were stacked neatly, ready for delivery. And as she looked around at her friends, tired but resolute, she knew that no matter how dark the storm, they would face it together. For Moira Dingle, this battle was more than land and legacy. It was about family, honor, and the unbreakable spirit of those who refused to be driven from home. And as the dawn broke fully, painting the fields in gold, Moira felt something she hadn't in weeks, hope.